this is your favorite, our favorite
this is gonna be
media
so
propagandists. Our favorite corporate media propagandists, Morning Joe or Joe, I think you say Joe Scarborough. I think that's how you say his name, Joe Scarborough.
Bro, CJ, you know these motherfuckers. Joe Scarborough, he still does pro Eric Adams propaganda to this day, dude.
He loves him some Eric Adams.
Eric Adams has a 29% approval rating.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get too off, but I watched a segment. I was thinking about doing it, but it was one of the segments we didn't have time for, so I eventually cut it. He was like, yeah, this is why the left is losing America. People like Eric Adams with pro police approach is winning people over. Meanwhile, the motherfucker has a 29% approval rating. This dude is invested, and he got the boomers.
That sounds like Morning Joe. That sounds like Morning Joe.
The boomers who watch the show have no idea what's going on in this world right now. You know how people who watch news who are less informed than people who don't watch it.
Yes.
The way that Morning Joe propagandizes their audience is literally a thing of beauty. The people who watch the show have a perception of this world that is different than the way we see stuff. This fundamental, and I just want to prefix the story. I'll pass it to you, CJ. But that's why we show Morning Joe, guys. Like, there's a few people that I think is worth breaking down. Rest of corporate media, I can't stomach. You said the same thing. Like 90% of corporate media, I cannot stomach. But there are a few people who propaganda is so effective and it's so slick, it's worth analyzing so we can break it down. Tucker Carlson is another one. Morning Joe is good in terms of like how they do it. Everyone else is amateur shit compared to Morning Joe and Tucker. I think the 5 is good in terms of propaganda. I just can't stomach them.
Yeah, I can't stomach them. I just can't stomach them. Yeah.
There's a few people. I think Jim Acosta is effective at what he does for the liberal audience, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a few people who are. I think he just got canned too. That's the funny thing. But there are a few people that are effective that's worth analyzing. This is like Morning Joe is like the message of the ruling class, like the message.
They're literally only talking to people who are they're not even speaking. Like, oh, you make a little 100,000 a year, nigga, get out of here. You make 200,000, get the fuck out of here. They ain't even talking to you. This is like, like a million, multiple million plus, and going, and you ownership, and you got all kind of like that's who this show is geared to.
Rachel
so
Maddow,
if you want to know what. No, Rachel Maddow is another good one. That's another good one.
CJ. I don't know why I forgot about it. I just saw this because of the comment. My bad, CJ. But he said Rachel Maddow is one of the best ones. Yeah, she is too. Like, like if you wanted to break down Russiagate, I used to watch Rachel Maddow just so I could see how they line about Russiagate. You know what I mean? Like, not to get informed. If you want to know how they are spinning that story, she was the motherfucker to go to. I would watch these Russiagate segments with Rachel Maddow, and I'm like, dude, holy shit. Liberals are losing their fucking mind. Like, anyway, sorry, CJ. I don't want to interrupt the segment too much. Go ahead, pass to you.
No, that's our style because some people says that when I interrupt you or you interrupt me. It's in the comments right now. I was going to put it up earlier.
Yeah, you
this is our style. This is our style. Yeah, this is our style of speaking. And it's going to appear that way. This is how we want. It's never any dead space here because we're always ready to go. But be prepared to listen. This is Morning Joe. This is our last segment of the stream.
But whether it's TikTok or other venues, what are you seeing in terms of your poll numbers, in terms of the appetite for young voters to be politically involved, to stay politically involved, and potentially be part of the Biden team in 2024?
Well, Jonathan, we saw just a tremendous outpouring of support, I think, among the progressive wing of this generation, this last election. We recently are publishing a very, very large post-election survey where we see that overall, like 1 in 3 young Americans voted, but that's not the right way to look at this, I think, in the midterms. We found that progressives and Democrats, a majority or more than a majority, voted in a lot of these battleground states. So the idea of the Biden campaign providing tools and relational tools for younger people, college students, younger women of color in particular, driving these results is going to be a very significant way, I think, for the Biden campaign to kind of expand their franchise and expand their base in 2024.
So I'm going to rewind it a little bit.
College students,
I need you to
younger
see
women of color.
I need you to see the tails in his face. He goes like this when he's lying, and you'll see he's very clear-eyed when he's not lying. He'll be just like this, no blinking. You can clearly, he's bad at this. You can clearly see he's going every time he's
Yeah.
he's about to tell a lie, his eyes roll to the back of his head. It's like real bad. So I'm gonna rewind it. So now with that in mind, now let's watch this segment again.
Social choice at this particular moment, I will note. But whether it's TikTok or other venues, what are you seeing in terms of your poll numbers, in terms of the appetite for young voters to be politically involved?
He's like, it's showtime. Lies. It's time to get my lies together right here, guys.
I laugh because it's like even the small little words that they use, man. Like I swear to God, maybe you guys think I'm paranoid, but that shit not accident. The young people appetite. No one talks like that. Who talks like that? Do you guys talk like that? I don't know. Anyway, maybe I'm being. Go ahead, CJ. Go ahead. It is small stuff, guys.
And potentially be part of the Biden team in 24.
Well, Jonathan, we saw just a tremendous outpouring of support, I think, among the progressive wing of this generation, this last election. We recently
see the eyes go close.
A very, very large.
Oh yeah, he's really bad.
We see that
you're right,
overall,
CJ.
like 1 in 3 young Americans voted, but that's not the right way to look at this. I think in the midterms, we found that progressives and Democrats, a majority or more than a majority, voted in a lot of these battleground states. So the idea of the Biden campaign providing tools and relational tools for younger people, college students, younger women of color in particular, driving.
Oh, sorry.
Just real quick point, because remember, I want you guys to realize they're not really talking to us in this segment. I always got to point this out. They have multiple messages in these shows, right? One, like the first obvious message they want to get, and they want to convince boomers, hey, look, Democrats is good. That's why young people are voting for Democrats, right? But the message they're really conveying to each other is that, hey, look at all these progressives that we tricked to vote for the Democratic Party. So this is I've seen them do these segments all the time. This is essentially the ruling class bragging to themselves. The job of MSNBC is to get people to vote Democrat. So they run this segment, essentially pat themselves on the back, because they were like, look at all these young people that we convinced to vote for this party that don't give a fuck about them. You saw that tweet by Sunrise, right? Even the people who are more reformists are starting to realize that, right? So this segment is also them affirming that to each other. Our propaganda is working to continue to drive young people to the party. And I want you guys to keep that in mind as you watch this, guys. I swear to God, they do this all the time, and this segment reeks of it. But rewind like 10 seconds.
That is such a great point, that because what they do after the midterms, young voters came out in droves. Look at this. What they're saying is all that money all of you guys paid for to get all of our research and all the all the people who live in the political industrial complex of policy making, polls, and all this stuff. Look, all of the stuff y'all paid for, those millions of dollars, work. We tricked them. We tricked them. Look how they came out and voted. Look how we told them student loan debt was going to be canceled when we knew that was a fucking joke.
Yeah.
Look at you get what I'm saying? They knew all this stuff. Look how we convinced people that the Inflation Reduction Act was actually a climate bill when it's a fucking joke. That's what they're doing. I never looked at it that way. Great point, Nick.
Yeah, they're selling their own work. They're selling their own work to each other. But go ahead, CJ. I just want to put this comment up because it's a good reply. This guy, Tim MC, said people are becoming more and more disillusioned about elections. The opposite of what the MSNBC do is saying.
Right.
Absolutely. But go ahead, CJ.
That's you live in a real world. That's the problem. That's the problem with these
results.
Yeah, that's RBN viewers.
It's going to be a very significant way, I think, for the Biden campaign to kind of expand their franchise and expand their base in 2024. It's not just about digital advertising. Those tools, which don't have advertising in large part, provide younger people an opportunity to share in their own way the story of their values, the story of the Biden administration to their friends and family members.
John, this is so interesting because actually, if you look at the
he's like pure propaganda for us. But go ahead, CJ.
Now you tell me if that couldn't be that same exact sentence, what he said, all of what he said couldn't be him giving a presentation to donors. That could have been the same exact thing he just said. Look what we did with all your money. Now, this is where. Now, she's from another country because you can hear it in her accent. So maybe that's why she didn't understand why maybe, I shouldn't have inserted this question, but she kind of pushes back and it throws him off. You can see in his response. So listen to this.
The recent polls, the group in which the Biden administration has the biggest problem is actually young voters. There was a poll, all these polls that just came out last week, only 56% of people under 35
You see him?
who align with the Democratic Party say Biden deserves a second team. I mean, is he? And that's, despite moves to try to reduce student debt and to minimize effects of people who have been convicted of marijuana offenses. So, is this about policy? Is this about communication? Is social media really going to change those kind of numbers, or is this about the fact that young people just feel, I don't know, Joe Biden's too old, or they'd like to see somebody else at the head of the Democratic ticket?
You sneaky motherfucker! Just real quick. Let me explain what she just did. See, at first I was like, okay, she pushed back at him. Even her pushback is propaganda, because look at what she brought up. She said, young people don't like Joe Biden, despite the fact that Joe Biden worked on student loans.
Right.
So she's essentially putting out the idea that young people dislike Joe Biden, but not for a good reason. Then
who would she be telling that to, Nick? Who would she be saying, despite he did this? What audience is that a message to? It's not me and you. Go ahead.
Yes, that's a good point. See, that's such a good point. So I want you to play that part just again after I get done.
Okay.
Because she essentially was like, Biden is just like for young people, despite doing this and this bullshit has nothing to do with anything. So she's saying that we're wrong. And then as she ends the question, she's like, maybe it has something to do with the fact that he's too old. You gotta see,
it's silly, something silly like that. Something silly like he's just too old because they're young people. They're that stupid. That's what she's doing.
I got a timeline full of young radicals where Biden age is like the last thing I see them bring up. And you guys know this on R&B. I don't critique his age a lot. CJ, how many times have we critique his age?
Never.
It's like one. Honestly, I think people make mistakes by doing that, because it's one of the things where if you like Biden, you immediately be turned off if you see someone make fun of his cognitive abilities and age. So I don't ever lean with that. You want to lean with the hard-hitting shit. Like, I feel like when you make fun of his age, that make people think like,
I don't think we've ever done a stream like that. I don't think we've ever done a stream or segment that we've done. I don't think so.
And guys, I want to say there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think it's one of the weakest things you can lean into. You know what I mean? So they bring up the fact that, I guess young people don't like Biden because his age. She's undercutting what play the clip again. You guys see what I'm talking about. I'm talking too much.
Yeah.
Go play the clip again. You guys see exactly what I'm talking about.
People an opportunity to share in their own way the story of their values, the story of the Biden administration to their friends and family members.
John, this is so interesting because actually, if you look at the recent polls, the group in which the Biden administration has the biggest problem.
Hopefully the video pop back up.
Yeah, it's actually my DVR. This is actually our TV service on here. So I know why I did that. It's going to play now.
All these polls that just came out last week, only 56% of people under 35 who align with the Democratic Party say Biden deserves a second team. I mean, is he? And that's, despite moves to try to reduce student debt and to minimize effects of people who have been convicted of marijuana.
You see how she immediately went to defend Biden's record against the radical, dumb young people. So even in the pushback, she still had to sprinkle propaganda. But go ahead. I made a point, but go ahead and play the video.
Just imagine who these two people are talking to. Imagine she's the one in the boardroom who's coming up and she's like, oh, well, I have questions. I'm seeing these numbers here and they're not matching up. And he's the one who's trying to pitch something. That's the feeling I get. And let's listen to his response.
Is this about policy? Is this about communication? Is social media really going to change those kind of numbers? Or is this about the fact that young people just feel, I don't know, Joe Biden's too old, or they'd like to see somebody else at the head of the Democratic
ticket? I can't think of any other reason. I can't think of any other reason to not like Joe Biden. He's too old, I guess. Like, that's what she's trying to say to the ruling class that's watching her.
It can't be him funding the police more. It can't be him escalating global war with China. It can't be him funding the part of the state of Israel. It can't be all these progressive promises that he it can't be none of that stuff. It must be he's too old. You sneaky motherfucker. Go ahead, play the video. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit on that one particular number. We need to really kind of dig below some of these headlines. I mean, according to the CNN poll, president's approval rating has gone up 18 points with younger people from June until now. It was 20. He had a 28-point margin among 18 to 29-year-olds in the Democrats did the midterm elections. I believe that younger people are kind of essential to his base, and we really need to look at the complete picture here. So I don't think.
What I do think this illustrates, Nick, and they're speaking to the ruling class, is that through this last election, they do now understand, and they have to now accept and actually attempt. They do now understand that young people is the only way they're going to win going forward. That's it. There's no other way for them to win, because if the young people did not fall for their lies, they literally would have been massacred. And I'm sorry, and if the GOP didn't go full anti-woke bullshit, they literally would have been massacred. So they understand that. They understand, or I'm believing that's why he's on here. That's why, because again, this is not for us. They're talking to themselves. So this is him essentially pitching to the ruling class. And also, I believe we need to focus on the younger voters. We need to come up with other ways of tricking them. Go ahead.
Also, another point of this segment is to continue to radicalize their boomer audience to the two-party duopoly. So the message that they send to Democratic Party voters who watch the show is that it's not the failings of the leaders. It's not Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden's fault that the Republican Party to go to the Supreme Court, that the Republican Party get these wins and they dominate in Florida, right? That the Republican Party took the House. It's because of these young, dumb, complaining, privileged young people. And that is the message that comes from Morning Joe. And that is the ooze of hatred that you hear that come from Joe Scarborough in particular, when he decried the younger people not going out and support the Democratic Party. And the boomers, they fall for it. The boomers who watch the show, they don't. The takeaway is not the Democratic Party lose because they're corrupt and because of Biden has, and I mean, young people have legitimate concerns with Biden. They come away with a segment that the young people are not grateful that Democrats be fighting for you. Why are you not grateful? Why we can't get more of these people come out?
You got bread and water. Why you ain't grateful, motherfucker? You got bread and water.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish this up. It's a couple more minutes.
He's not necessarily kind of weak among this generation. In fact, it's a combination, I think, of his record in terms of the bipartisanship around gun violence prevention.
See how he's stumbling and stuff. Climate, he is so off his rocker right now.
Of course, keeping his promise on student debt is one of the reasons that we saw such significant turnout. Remember, we saw this turnout a month ago in the midterm elections without Trump on the ballot. Democrats won 2/3 to 70% of a younger vote in the Northeast around Fetterman, in the Southwest, in the South. So the Democratic Party understands, for the president down, how essential younger Americans are to their success. And I think that's why they're investing so much in these new relational tools and databases.
John, part of this survey isn't about politics, but
this is the part about Gen Z. So now we transition to the part. They're just going to bring up a statistic, and this is astonishing that they bring up. So let's listen to this part. It gets a little, I mean, the topic is kind of serious. So
see mental health struggles. Nervous, anxious, or on edge. 66% of those polled felt that way in the prior 2 weeks of the poll. Down, depressed, or hopeless. 44% responded that they felt one element or another in the prior 2 weeks of polling. What does that tell you?
He's about to say capitalism, the stresses and the conditions of capitalism. He's about to say, Nick, and then he's going to say we have to do something about the Fed. No, he's not going to say any of that, actually.
I was going to say, that's a surprisingly good question. But we know they're not asking it to set the obvious answer up. But we all know the answer to that real question, right? Young people have been abandoned by the system that he's not allowed to critique. So I want to hear the way he weaves on. That's actually a surprising good question.
I was surprised too. Oh, there he goes.
Michael, let me boil it down real quick for you here. That every single high school, every single college in America, you have dozens, if not more, young people are so depressed they're considering.
Let me just pause it here so we can see this graphic. It says Gen Z mental health struggles felt at least several days in the past 2 weeks. Walt Family Foundation. I believe that's the Walton, that's Walmart. This is, and it says nervous, anxious, or on edge, 66%, down, depressed, or hopelessness, 44%, thoughts of suicide, 12%. And this was about over 3,000 people who took the poll.
Now this is the thing that capitalists cannot reconcile with, and this is what I played up when I had my debate against Destiny, right? Where you have these privileged people that pretend that capitalism is working. If capitalism is this great system, despite all the privileges that you guys claim we enjoy, why are we so unhappy compared to countries that quote unquote got less than what we have? Like obviously the workers are suffering. People are suffering under this system, and that leads to the poverty of despair. And now they try to come up with 1,000 reasons. And the right wing, they do this thing where they blame lockdowns, even though we really didn't have lockdowns, and that's been a long time ago. Like this has been a trend. A lot of people have been trying to find a lot of different reasons what this is, but this is a reflection of our society, the poverty of despair, the lack of culture, the way that capitalism just utterly destroyed people's ability to live a wholesome life, even if you think you live one. And the reason why I say that, there are a lot of people who quote unquote achieved the American dream, and then at age 40 they realize they wasted their entire life because they was a worker robot. They look like, what the fuck did I actually do? I missed so much of my kid's life. And then that's when the midlife depression hits. Then that's when they become part of the statistics. So I'm not even talking about people that are necessarily poor, CJ. I'm talking about the rotten culture. Right. Imagine that worker who's not technically poor, but has to work working paycheck to paycheck because he has to pay his mortgage. He had to pay his car payment. He got to make sure his kids is fed. Is this a fulfilling life? The way we structure our society? But I'm going on the rant. But this is.
But you know what capitalists will see and say this? The capitalists look at this and go, they're not going to go, you know what? Yeah. Let's increase. Let's give them health care. Let's make sure the bulk up mental health services. You know what they go? Increase police funding. Because we're going to have some problems here.
Exactly.
Police fundings and police military funding, because these guys are not going to put up with this shit much longer. So make sure we have enough defense here, enough protection. That's exactly what their response is. Let's listen to the rest of his answer. I'll go back just a little bit so we can get the sort of the beginning of what he says here.
Yeah, because he's struggling to answer the question.
That every single high school, every single college in America, you have dozens, if not more, young people are so depressed they're considering self-harm. 21% of the last 2 weeks, 5 or 6% every single day. That is an epidemic. We saw this before COVID, we saw this during COVID, and now we're seeing this essentially kind of post-COVID. It needs to have all of our energy to deal with this as soon as possible.
All right, Director of Polling at Harvard Institute of Politics. John
That's for the ruling class, so the ruling class can go, we care. You see, we did 30 seconds on Morning Joe about mental health for Gen Zers. We care.